Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is all about Pokemon investing, and that's what the whole channel's about, really, isn't it? And this is just half hour of power. You don't need to watch me. You can not switch it off, but you can switch the video off. If you want to just pop your headphones in while you're going for a jog or a walk, or if you want to, pop a video on in the background while you're doing some housework, if you want to just pop it in your car while you're going for a drive, this is the video for that. It's half hour of power. I'm just going to be talking and cramming as much possible knowledge as I can into a half hour session for you as possible. Before we jump into the video though, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. It's really appreciated. And what's also appreciated is all the members that join up. Thank you so much for being members. When you are a member, it's pretty easy, just join up from the home screen. But when you are a member, you can ask me any investing related questions via email. I get heaps of questions come through and have some great conversations with people. So on to the topic at hand. This is going to be an unedited talk. It's my opinion. It's my take on it. Hopefully everything flows. I don't do cuts and shuts and edits in my video. It's literally just me talking. It's almost like, when you just have that talk, and I have so many of them with heaps of mates, and particularly at work, so many colleagues are into Pokemon card investing or just Pokemon cards in general, and a lot of into a lot of NBA cards and a bit of One Piece and Dragon Ball. So, we have heaps of conversations. It's so good. Sometimes it's a bit quiet. You can just chat for half an hour about cards, and, everyone gets so excited about it. And there's such a mixture of ages. And I'm sure the viewers watching this, there's also such a mixture of ages. Whether you're 15 years old, 25 years old, 35 years old, or 55 years old, or anywhere between that or past that or before that, Pokemon cards collecting / investing is a hobby for anyone. And so many people enjoy it. So, this is what this video is all about. Anyway, let's jump into it. So Pokemon investing, it's really, it's a term that hasn't really been around for all that long, has it? Like, it seems like it's something really, really new, which in reality, it sort of is. We saw the massive, I suppose, worldwide phenomenon. Phenomenon might not be the right word. Maybe disaster is a better word, which was COVID, which, kept so many people locked inside, and people were itching for things to do. They were itching to re-explore maybe some old hobbies. It meant people were digging through old cupboards and wardrobes and attics and basements and everything in between, and perhaps finding old collections of different things, whether it was Digimon cards or in a lot of cases, Pokemon cards. And it reignited this passion that everyone or a lot of people had for Pokemon cards. And as a result, of course, the printers got turned on to 1,000. I'll talk about that more in a second. But the fact that I'm trying to get at is this whole term of Pokemon investing is relatively new. I mean, there's people that bucked the trend, were ahead of the game, viewed the crystal ball and got it right. There's people sitting on product from ages ago, bulk XY product, bulk black and white product, even people with a lot of, Wizards of the Coast series products, whether it's, blisters, boosters, anything in between. So, there were people that were ahead of the game that built themselves into such a phenomenal position because so many things went up in value during COVID, and this was one of them. We saw such a rise in demand, and with that level of demand will bump up prices. It just causes upward pressure on prices, of course, when demand is outweighing supply on things. And that's what happened. It was just this huge surge in demand for Pokemon cards during lockdown. And Pokemon cards wasn't the only thing. We all know heaps of things went up in price by a lot. Real estate went crazy. Car industry that I work in, selling cars went crazy. It was so hard to get stock. Used car supply was also hard to get, and really, heaps of upward pressure on used cars. So Pokemon cards wasn't the only thing. But this whole notion of Pokemon card investing was relatively new. Like, even the Poke Investing Reddit forum and other places and groups, it really only probably came about or into fruition around 2020. So it's this whole notion of Pokemon investing is probably only about 4 years old. Of course, the trading card itself is so much older, and there's people with a lot of older products that have gone up in value. But I really see people, and maybe the rise of it, attributed to people really wanting something a little bit more. Like, when we're talking investments, the old standard investment of investing into shares or property or something similar it's almost just a bit boring for the modern generation. It's almost like we're chasing something new. We had a lot of the alt currencies, like the cryptocurrencies. We had things like NFTs, which some have been super successful and some have been super massive flops. But what it shows, I think, is Gen Ys, Gen Zs, millennials, I forget all the terms of them now, but we're chasing something different to invest in. And what's more fun than investing into shiny cardboard or sealed shiny cardboard? It's just so much fun, isn't it? Now, when it comes to that, and this whole notion of, the Pokemon card investing world really taking off, that leads me into the next topic of conversation that I wanted to touch on, is this, I suppose it's almost, well, it's not a myth, but it sort of is in some regards. And that's the comment that everyone's doing it. Everyone's hoarding it. Therefore, nothing will go up in value. Now, look, it is true. And I would probably say it's such a hard thing to measure. We know it's almost impossible to measure how many people are storing or hoarding sealed product. I'm sure the amount of people storing and hoarding, if you'd like to call it that, sealed product is so much higher than what it was 5 years ago. And that was probably higher than what it was 5 years before that and 5 years before that. So yes, I agree with the notion that we're seeing a massive uptick or increase in the amount of people that are investing in sealed Pokemon card products. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's doing it though. You've got to remember the Pokemon card hobby, it's got so many facets to it. It's really made for kids, really. Like, that's what it's made for. So many kids or parents buy their kids so many Pokemon cards, and so many get opened on the daily, like crazy. There's also a huge amount of people that play it for the competitive side. They play the game because it's actually a heap of fun to play. It's a heap of fun to construct decks. And then there's probably the people like us, or the people that tune into my channel or others like me channel that see so many people talking about investing in Pokemon cards, and they're probably sitting on the Reddit forums to do with Poke investing and see all these photos of massive sealed collections, or cupboards full of booster boxes and elite trainer boxes, or for the noobs out there, bad collection boxes. And noob, that's a funny word, isn't it? That's what we used to call mates when we were 15 years old playing Halo. You're a noob. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought there a little bit now. The whole idea that everyone's stacking and storing Pokemon cards, when your blinkers are on and that's the only headspace you're looking in, then of course you're probably thinking everyone's doing it. When really, it's probably still, yes, I agree, there's more people than what were doing it before, but it's still such a small portion of the population that are doing it. And on that small portion, it's almost like Survivor. Remember that old TV show? I don't even know if it's still running. It probably is, where you get booted off the island. And what was the saying around the Survivor logo? It was like outwit, outlast, outstay, or something along those lines. And, that's the notion I think you've almost got to take into Pokemon card investing as a Pokemon investor, that if you can outwit, outlast, outstay, if that was the logo, I don't know if it was, in sealed product, then you're going to be the winner. So this whole notion that everyone's doing it, you've got to remember that so many things come up in so many people's lives that are just so uncontrollable. There's too many variables. If you're sitting on next to no cash in the bank and, your mortgage repayments have gone up a truckload, and then you have a washing machine that breaks, or a car that breaks down, or you've had an accident in a car and you need a new one, or whatever the reason might be, stuff happens in people's lives. You move states because you've got a new job and you need to liquidate. You don't want to take Pokemon cards with you, so you sell them. My whole point is, with all these things that happen in people's lives, all these collections that are stuffed away in cupboards and attics and basements and sealed box containers with anti-humidity things, so many of these people are going to sell their collections. And that's why I like that saying. If you're in a good financial position where, you don't need to stress about those things, you have the ability to outwit, outlast, outstay other people in the game. And what that means eventually is you might have a rarer and rarer and rarer booster box. Now, on that sort of leads into the next topic of conversation, which I said I'd mention or talk about next. Before in the video, was overprinting. That's the other thing that people are really worried about. So they're really concerned about two things at the moment with modern when it comes to Pokemon card investing. A, that everyone's doing it, and B, that it's so massively overprinted that it'll never go up in price. Now, the biggest counter argument I think you can possibly have to those two notions is the set Evolving Skies. Now, Evolving Skies has a massive PSA population. I don't know if it was the most heavily printed Sword and Shield set. I don't think it was. Perhaps Vivid Voltage might have been the most heavily printed set. But Evolving Skies wasn't like this tiny short print. It it was popular. It came out around the 25th anniversary. It came out around, Fusion Strike. It came around when, a lot of places were still in lockdown, and the Pokemon card, industry was just going bonkers. Like, it was printed to demand. People wanted that. People still want that product like crazy. Evolving Skies was printed a lot and had a small reprint, which got eaten up really, really quickly. The demand for that set was crazy. It is one of the greatest modern Pokemon card sets, if not the greatest modern card Pokemon set. I don't think it stands up to some of the Wizards of the Coast era or some of the EX era, but it is a phenomenal Pokemon card set. It'll go down as one of the greatest of all time. Everyone's waiting for it, aren't they? Because you hear people talk about it all the time with Scarlet and Violet. When's the next Evolving Skies? When's the next Evolving Skies? And just hasn't seemed to have come yet. Everyone's waiting for it and seems to be holding their money until it does happen. But my point is, those two arguments that everyone's doing it and it's massively overprinted, therefore things won't go up in price. Well, welcome into the room, Evolving Skies, because that was printed crazy and everyone was, a lot of people were ripping it, of course, because they're chasing, the multitude of massive hits inside the set. But still, a lot of people were keeping sealed Evolving Skies, and look at the prices of Evolving Skies now. And that's not the only Sword and Shield set. People were saying the same about Chilling Reign. People were saying the same about Fusion Strike. People were saying the same about Astral Ray. Astral was never going anywhere because, it was the worst main set surrounded by a lot of better sets. Even though I said for a long time, Astral Radiance is a real sleeper set and deserves more accolades than what it gets. And without the reprint like, Lost Origin and Silver Tempest got, I think it's going to shoot up in price quite rapidly. But anyway, my point is, this was the biggest printing period in Pokemon card history, Sword and Shield, and still look at the prices. And that leads me on to the next point, which is the downside or lack of downside risk when it comes to investing in booster boxes. We just saw the biggest printing period ever in Pokemon card history, and every single set, every single box, from the worst set through to the best set, so from Rebel Clash through to Evolving Skies, every single booster box is up. Even though they got printed into the ground, even though everyone's hoarding it, they've all gone up. Even if you equally distributed funds across every single set from Sword and Shield base through to Silver Tempest in main set booster boxes, your percentage gains would be massive because you're taking into account base set, Rebel Clash, Fusion Strike, Chilling Reign, Evolving Skies, Lost Origin. Yes, there's some that haven't performed well at all, like Darkness Ablaze or Vivid Voltage. That's almost like dead money. It's still up, though. It's still up on what you could have bought it at. So my point is, when everyone's saying that, these things, they won't go up, I mean, the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? Like, they've just gone absolutely crazy. And that's sort of the next topic I wanted to talk about is, can you actually make money from it? There's so many skeptics, and there's also so many people that give up. There's so many people that buy something and go, oh, I've heard that, you can make heaps off Pokemon cards. Let's buy a couple of booster boxes, store them, and 12 months later, maybe they haven't moved, and then they jump out of the hobby. So I don't think people need to be scared. And reverting back to that survivor logo, I don't even know if it's the right terms, but, outwit, outlast, outsurvive, you can do that quite easily. It's quite comfortable. Just buy them, sit on them, track them if you want to look at it that way. Like, I use the Collector app. I'm certainly not affiliated with it or spruiking it, but I just find it the easiest to use. Is the pricing 100% accurate? No, but it's not too bad. It's pretty accurate, I feel. Like, give or take maybe 10%, you should be pretty on the money with most things. So, it's just so easily that way. And yes, to answer that question, can you actually make money on it? I mean, Sword and Shield, to reiterate and go home on that point before we move on to the next topic, it just slammed the opinion home that, even if something is massively overprinted, it's still going up in value. Right, well, I suppose the next topic, when it comes to that, and it comes to making money, hopefully this is all flowing, you'll get in what you put out. Sorry, you'll get out what you put in. The more you spend, the more gains there are to make. But be careful with that. Like, there's a lot of people that I've seen in a lot of, whether it's Reddit forums or other things, that have spent beyond their means. Or maybe even they practically had no means to spend money on Pokemon cards, and they might have spent their last $500 or $1,000. And then, there's a sad story about someone whose dog needed surgery and they couldn't afford to pay for it anymore because they just spent like $600 on sealed Pokemon booster boxes. And it's like, hold on, put things into perspective. You'll only get out of it what you put in. And I always talk about the 5% rule, and people joke with me and they go, 5% of your income. I got 95% of my income and I'm living in my mum's basement. I've got 500 grand worth of Sword and Shield booster boxes, but I'm living in my mum's basement. So people like to joke about it, but that's where I see it. It is the fun part of the investment portfolio. For me, 5% is comfortable. Some people might go way heavier. Some people might go like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of booster boxes just to say, I'm going all in and I'm putting my proverbials on the line for this. So, I guess you need to ask yourself when it comes to how much to invest. And I've used this notion a lot of times, the whole 5%. That's me being risk adverse. I'm not a hugely risky person, and each to their own. Everyone's different. Some people might want to take massive risks with it to get massive upside potential. Other people might want to be a little bit more conservative like me and still really enjoy the hobby and really pick up, as many possible booster boxes as they can. And as you can see in the background, a heap of elite trainer boxes, which are just collecting pieces for me. If they go up in value, great, but they're really just a collecting piece for me. Booster boxes are where it's at for me when it comes to investing in sealed product. Now on that, here's a little story. When we're talking booster boxes, I want to talk about learning from your mistakes next. Now, I've said this story a couple of times, but if you haven't heard it, because there's an extra part to it. Back in about 2010, 2011, I was buying a lot of booster boxes, both Dragon Ball Z Score, which you'll see up in the background here, and of course Pokemon, EX era. We were talking EX Team Rocket Returns, we were talking EX Dragon Frontiers, we were talking EX Crystal Guardian, EX Power Keepers, etc. And buying a bunch of Score booster box. Now, if you can't remember, there used to be a website, I don't even know if it's still about, called Pojo, where you could connect with other like-minded people, and you created your username. You could upload things to swap and trade. You could upload lists of things you wanted to buy. And I always just I want to buy Pokemon booster boxes, and I want to buy Score DBZ booster boxes. There was Dragon Ball Z forum, there was Pokemon forum, I think there was Yu-Gi-Oh, and there was every other sort of trading card around at the time. I used to just buy bulk booster boxes because people would quite often sell them in cheap in there. They'd be like, hey, look, I've sold the comic book store or the card shop store, and I've got a heap of EX booster boxes. I need to offload them. I'm happy to offload them, which worked out to be about 200 Australian dollars a box. And same with Dragon Ball Z Score. There was people that, I got 2 cases of limited edition Cell Game Saga and Cell Saga or Trunks Saga, if you're into Dragon Ball, and I need to offload them. So of course, I was buying heaps, and I was opening heaps, I was collecting heaps, I was selling off extras and singles and buying collections and sort of covering my costs for the whole exercise. I wasn't making heaps of money, not much, but it was heaps of fun. I had a blast doing it. And eventually I sold my whole Dragon Ball Z Score collection and the whole Pokemon card collection, bar the ones I really wanted, for pretty good money to put towards a house, of course, because like I said, things crop up. And for that stage in my life, things cropped up and I needed the money to do that. Now, learning from my mistakes, imagine if I'd kept them all sealed. Imagine if I still had a case of EX Dragon Frontiers sealed, even EX Power Keepers sealed, EX Crystal Guardians sealed, EX Team Rocket Returns sealed. Imagine if we still had those cases. And you know what? It doesn't even seem that long ago. 2010, 2011 is, 13 years ago now? But it doesn't really feel like that long ago. For me, it feels like yesterday. I was at uni. It just doesn't feel that long ago at all. Geez, time's going quick, isn't it? So that's my story, a little story there. Just learn from your mistakes. And that's why when people are like, oh, aren't you so tempted to open them? No, I've just banned myself. I'm not opening a booster box. Oh, but I am. At 15,000 subscribers, I'm opening Twilight Masquerade, and I'll be giving the hits out to you guys, so whoever wins. Now, on to the next topic. I don't know how close we are to half hour of power here. Like I said, I was just trying to cram as much knowledge into it as possible. I just wanted to talk about a few different things, and I've talked about narrowing your focus. We can do modern or vintage investing, or in between, or we can do sealed and singles, sealed versus singles. There's so many things. I think you really need to grab a niche. And I did a video called, I think, riches are in the niches. Of course, we're talking niche, not niche. That's a different way of pronouncing it, but just flies. Riches are in the niches, which is, really honing in on a specific area of Pokemon card investing and becoming an expert in it. Because if you become an expert in it, you become more knowledgeable on it. If you become more knowledgeable on it, you're less likely to make mistakes and you're more likely to make better decisions, which in the long run will give you better returns. So for me, it's really just modern Pokemon card booster boxes. That's where I see my market knowledge really, really honed into, where I can make good decisions to give me the best possible outcome. Now, the final point I wanted to touch on is what to invest in right now. This is probably the biggest question. I'm actually going to do a video on this soon, and probably the biggest argument when it comes to this is, should I invest in Sword and Shield still, even though prices have gone up, like sets like Evo Skies? That's the most common question. Should I still invest in Evo Skies? To answer that really, really bluntly, in 10 years' time, you'd be kicking yourself if you didn't buy Evolving Skies now. Can you hold it for 10 years? Can you outwit, outlast, outsurvive? That's another question. But that's the big one. Should I buy Sword and Shield or should I buy Scarlet and Violet? Now, in my opinion, I do not think Scarlet and Violet as a total volume across every set will have the same print capacity or volume as what Sword and Shield did. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I don't know how much that actually matters, because the whole notion of pricing in the modern Western economy is all off supply and demand. And we know there was massive, massive demand for Sword and Shield, and arguably demand for Scarlet and Violet is slowed down a little bit. And it's no reflection of Scarlet and Violet. It's not a reflection of how good the sets are or how good the artwork is. I think it's just a reflection of the broader economy. Every industry's slowed down a little bit, whether it's 10% or 20% or 30%. We all feel it, in most industries. So what to invest in? Ask yourself that, if I invest in Fusion Strike now, in 5 years' time, would you be kicking yourself that you didn't pick it up at $200 or $220, whatever it is? Chilling Reign, same question. Then again, in 5 years' time, would you be kicking yourself that you didn't pick up sets like Temporal Forces or Twilight Masquerade? You've also got the best opportunity with Scarlet and Violet to get in at the lowest possible price point. You've missed that boat with Sword and Shield. You can't buy booster boxes at $100 anymore. That boat has sailed. But you can pick them up at 200 and look, I had the same conundrum, 4 or 5 years ago probably 4 years ago when, Sun and Moon era was coming to the end. And I was like, Cosmic Eclipse booster box, Unbroken Bonds booster box, Unified Minds booster box. I really want them, but they're like 300 Australian dollars. When I can buy Sword and Shield boxes like Darkness Ablaze and Vivid Voltage for 180 Australian dollars. And you know what? I'm so glad I chose to pick solid sets that had already proven that they can go up in value over some of the Sword and Shield ones. Maybe take that for a bit of advice, hey? I think we must be getting close to the end of half hour. Hopefully I packed in as much as I can, and hopefully everyone got something out of this. I'm Michael, this is PokeOz, and I'll catch everyone next time. Nope, I'm not quite done. I'm not quite finished. You can't get rid of me that quickly. One last final thing I wanted to touch on was the whole notion of selling these. So it's great to make gains on paper, isn't it? Like everything looks good on paper. Oh, my Evolving Skies booster box went from $100 to $600. That's a massive return. But you know what? You got to sell it. And look, so many things are super liquid. Like Evolving Skies are probably the most liquid booster box. Like it's easy to sell because there's so much popularity. So that's what I just wanted to touch on to finish off is, when it comes to selling, you've got to build up a profile that you can actually sell. Like you're not going to realize any gains until you do sell. Now we're lucky here in Australia, speaking of selling, a really quick little interlude, that if you purchase a collectible in Australia for under 500 Australian dollars, you don't pay capital gains tax on it. So you could buy 1,000 Evolving Skies booster boxes for 200 Australian dollars pretty much at launch. And if they're all now at 1,000 Australian dollars and you sell all 1,000 of those, 1,000 times 1,000 is 100,000? No, 1 million. Whoa. Point is, you don't pay any capital gains tax on that. How good is that? There's so many other investments, whether it's shares or property, where you've got to pay tax on it. You don't have to in Australia. So anyway, back onto the topic of building up a profile. Whether it's on eBay or whether it's on another selling site, or maybe you're so heavy into it that you could actually make your own online store to sell it. Either way, you need to build up a profile where you can actually sell these things in the future, because that's the only time you're actually going to liquidate that tangible object and turn it into cold, hard Johnny cash. Because without doing that, it's just numbers on paper. It's the same as property, isn't it? Everyone can sit here and go, oh, well, you know, I bought my property 5 years ago for 300,000 Australian dollars and now it's 650,000 Australian dollars. Like, I've made heaps of money. Yeah, okay, but then you've got to sell it. And if you do sell it, you've got to buy in a comparative market because everything else has gone up. So same thing sort of occurs in Pokemon cards, where you're only going to realize your gains when you actually sell them. And that's the really, really important thing that I don't think enough people think about. I see so many, pictures of collections and everyone's saying, how am I doing? Give me some feedback, give me some advice. And I'm like, man, that's going to be hard to sell. What a nightmare. Like, you have 40 Celebrations collection boxes. How long is it going to take you to sell those? That's massive. Just buy booster boxes. It's not that difficult. Of course, they're liquid. They're easy to sell. Think about who's purchasing this stuff in the future. The people that are going to purchase Pokemon cards are going to be the people that want to open it. And you know what? How many people also want to buy a $2,000 booster box? Really, a lot of the people buying them are hardcore collectors and or people that are going to want to open them to make a profit or stream it. Someone like a bigger Pokemon card YouTuber that will open products, sell off the packs individually as a box break, so they're making their money back on the box, so it's no loss. And they're getting all the AdSense revenue from creating that content and maybe super likes and other things that come from creating that content. They're the sort of people that are going to want to buy your product. Why would people want to spend $400 in the future on a collection box that's 15 years old? I mean, some people do, but my point is, it is not as liquid as a booster box. So please keep that in mind when you're investing in sealed products, that one day you'll need to sell them. And it's more saleable if it's more liquid. And it's more liquid because it's more popular. And the old saying is, if it's popular new, it's going to be popular secondhand in the currency. And I think the same rings true for the Pokemon card investing world, that if it's popular new, so it's a popular product of a popular set with popular hits inside it, it's going to be easy to sell in the future. Like, what's going to be easy to sell in the future? A Darkness Ablaze booster box or a Chilling Reign booster box? Of course it's Chilling Reign because it's a better set. What's going to be easy to sell in the future? A Paldea Evolved booster box or a Scarlet and Violet base booster box? A Paldea Evolved booster box because it has better hits inside it and it has a better chase card inside it. So please think of those things when it comes to buying Pokemon card sealed products and, I suppose, spending a fair bit of money on it. Well, I think that must be very close to wrapping up the half hour of power now. So I will officially sign out. That was a little encore at the end there. I'm Michael. This is Pokeoz. Catch everyone next time.